We want to understand what's happening with this war in Iran, and the ambassador of Iran to Kenya is our guest.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here, and good morning to all your audience and viewers.
It's good to have you in studio.
You're a great audience.
Yeah, thank you. We usually start the day off with a quote. We share a quote, tell us if it resonates with you, if you agree with it or not. Today's quote is an old African proverb. It was said a long, long time ago, so it can't exactly be credited, but it's a simple one that says, when the music changes, so does the dance. When the music changes, so does the dance.
Yeah. So, it's a bit, because it should be understood in the context of the culture, you know. But as I understand it, it means that we need to adjust ourselves to the situation. And now the situation, at least as I understand,
yes,
in Iran and in the whole region, is something that we should react accordingly to protect ourselves. So this is the way that I understand from this proverb.
Very true.
Thank you.
Adjusting.
Ambassador, getting straight into this issue of what's happening in your country and in the region, there's fighting that escalated and got into a proper bombardment from Friday into Saturday, right? But it has been building up over time in terms of just the rhetoric, the attempt at mediation and having a conversation around this, and then the escalation into it. Do you feel that what happened with the Israeli attack on Friday was justified, or they call it a preemptive strike because they felt that Iran would have taken that strike against them, so they were doing it preemptively? Were they justified to do it?
Yeah, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. You know, that's a very important question, and it requires clarification and answer. Because always they have been in enmity with Iran almost over the decades, 47 years. And they have always justified their actions, all their actions against Iran, from not only Israeli regime, but also the United States. They brought, sanctions and coercive measures in Iran, used their maximum policy pressure against Iran, embargoes, and then they tried to bring chaos and instability into the society and the country. And they started 12 days of war against Iran, and now we are in the second, in continuation of that war. And they have always resorted to this kind of preemptive attack. So, in international law, preemptive attack has no place. You cannot find any justification for preemptive. And the only cases that an entity, like a country, who is a member to the United Nations, has the right to use force against another country is for self-defense, or very exceptionally in the cases that the United Nations Security Council has approved it under the Article 7 of its charter. So, preemptive means I will attack you because I feel that you are going to attack me in the future.
Yeah.
So it is not imminent. And what they did, it was unwarranted, unprovoked military aggression against Iran.
Yes.
And, many, even in the United States, many senators, members of the parliament and many authorities, they themselves also criticized this kind of argument. Absolutely, it's not acceptable.
Okay, so there was no plan by Iran to attack Israel or the USA?
Absolutely not, because, even in June 2025, we were under attack. And they said that Iran was on the break, in the time that to attack Israel. We don't have any reason to attack another countries. And for at least over centuries, Iran had no case of invasion or attacking others. We have always been under attack, and we have always defended ourselves. And this is the case this time. It is absolutely wrong kind of narrative that Iran was to attack. It was not imminent threat. We always were ready and still ready to defend ourselves and react, but we will not initiate any attack.
Any aggression.
Absolutely not.
That's one half. I agree with the idea of like what is a preemptive attack really, because we've normalized the word, but what really is a preemptive attack. But on the other end as well, there are these countries in the Middle East that essentially host US bases, yes, but were not aggressors towards Iran, but have now seen missiles being launched at them. I remember seeing the UAE Minister of Foreign Affairs talking about the fact that they had already agreed to not have their bases, be used to launch any attacks onto Iran, but Iran still did fire missiles towards them. In that sense, that's also, problematic.
When you are attacked, and these attacks are originated from bases that are in the neighboring countries, you cannot sit and just watch and to see that your people are killed on a daily basis. And you have to react and to defend yourself. And to exercise the right to defend, you have to attack those who are attacking you. And the places that are attacking you are the military bases in the region. And we have not we have not attacked our neighbors. We will not do that. We live in, neighborhood. The principle of neighborhood is always been observed by Iran, and we will not do that. Again, yesterday there was some rumors that Iran has attacked Turkey. We denied it. It's absolutely wrong, and we had not done this. So it's not, and it has been rejected by our authorities. We haven't done that.
Okay, so Balozi, you're saying that Iran did not retaliate by attacking these countries. You're attacking the bases that are based in these countries.
Exactly.
Are you friendly with Qatar, with Kuwait, with Saudi Arabia?
Of course.
Right?
Of course, we are friendly. We respect them. We respect their sovereignty and territory. But, when the missiles comes from the territories that the bases are there, you have to react and you have to respond. You cannot just watch. And this is our right. It's our inalienable right to defend from whenever the threat and the attacks are coming.
So let me get this clear. So from Iran's point of view, you are completely differentiating between the military base that's operated by USA, that's in Qatar, from Qatar itself, right? And the other
military
UAE.
bases and the U.S. interests in the region, because when your military forces are evacuated the base and they are, gone to a hotel, of course that would be a legitimate target.
Which is in a civilian
we will
area.
not target civilians, and you haven't heard any casualty or any destruction. The only thing is that we target military targets.
Did Iran inform its friends in the neighborhood that we are going to hit targets in your country, but only because they are military bases of our enemy?
It is very logical. If we have foreign bases and from their bases from our territory, the others are attacked, it's their right to defend themselves.
Did you inform them?
We, from the beginning, quite before the start of this aggression, our authorities and also our martyred supreme leader declared that if they attack Iran, it would be a regional war. And the war means that we will respond and we will target the military bases of the U.S. in the region, because we don't have access to U.S. And the only access that we have to defend ourselves is their presence in the region.
All right. The diplomatic, sorry,
No,
Mariam.
no
The
worries.
diplomatic response from these countries, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, has been not understanding that you are attacking military bases in their country. The diplomatic response has been a condemnation of the attacks in their country and saying that they are going to defend their sovereignty. The response that's coming militarily is from these countries actually deploying the defense systems against the missiles that are being fired by Iran. That means that Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait are engaging with Iran by defending themselves.
of course, they have the right to defend themselves. We do not deny their right. But when they are attacked, we didn't attack their territory or their sovereignty. They are fully respected, and we are Muslim countries. We are neighboring countries. We have to live eventually together. And the only purpose is to target U.S. Forces, U.S. interests and assets and bases. That's the only response that we have given to them.
Thinking through if this is moving from a diplomatic perspective, the United Arab Emirates, for example, had initially said, and I know some other countries in the Gulf, that they would not allow the U.S. bases in their countries to be used to launch attacks on Iran. And I think they did largely keep their word. So then what is the justification for the attacks on them? Even they do host the military bases, yes,
because
but they were cut
all
to
the
four.
attacks comes from the surrounding, from their countries.
What do you mean by that? So if I'm the UAE, for example, and I've said...
And if you remember, 2 or 3 aircraft was down on the territory of Kuwait. What does it mean? What are they doing there?
I don't know.
So just this is a good answer to your question. Let's come back, please. Let's come back to the aggression by the United States and the Zionist regime of Israel against my country.
We will get to that.
On the first day,
we will get to that. I'm just trying to understand.
I think I responded to that question. We haven't attacked our neighbors. We will not do that. If you put this question, this is my answer again and again. You know, we will not target the people and the neighbor countries and all their assets or their civilians, not at all. We only target military forces of the United States. That's the only answer.
In the build-up to these attacks, there were the talks that were happening, being mediated by Oman. Had Iran conceded some ground in those talks?
You know, just before the day before they start the aggression against Iran, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Oman traveled to United States, had a meeting with the J.D. Vance, the Vice President of U.S. there. And he declared that, we had, through the negotiations, a very breakthrough milestone in negotiations. And the agreement is in our hand. We can achieve it very easily. The only thing is that you stop your plans for attacking Iran and come to the table to finalize it. But they didn't listen to it because this war was pre-planned even before the negotiations. And it was the second time that in the middle of negotiation, they bombed and destroyed the table of negotiations. The diplomacy pathway was destroyed by them. And it's very obvious that the Netanyahu didn't allow the negotiations to be continued and to be resultful. But we got there, and this is something that exactly the foreign minister of the Sultanate of Oman declared in the United States. But they didn't listen because it was a pre-planned attack against Iran. And the reason is that, you know, there are many reasons. It's not preemptive at all. They pre-planned because they had a multi-layer strategy to bring Iran to the knee as an independent country. You know, they started from the sanctions, the wars, the pressures, all these things, and then the riots and violent protests. It was in style of kind of terrorist styles. In Iran, they couldn't and they failed. And they came to the 12 days of war. Again, they failed. And this time they started to accomplish their projection for defeating Iran and, you know, bring Iran in chaos situation, not only for regime change. Regime change is one of their purpose that they have claimed. They are not happy with a strong Iran, you know, an independent Iran. And they have plans for separatists, for secessionists, to divide Iran in parts, you know, from two different parts. And then when you have a weak Iran, then you can control the whole region. And that's the only purpose. They want to control the whole region, ideologically speaking, because they believe that the whole region belongs to the Jewish people. And then they need resources because Iran is the second or third richest country in the world in terms of natural resources, and of course they are looking to retake their control that they have lost over the 47 years of revolution afterwards, to retake their control of the resources, and this is something that they have declared very, very openly.
There's something you said earlier after we read the news fix on NATO having intercepted missiles in Turkey.
Yeah.
So you're saying that from you and your government, Iran did not fire any missiles into Turkey?
Just today, our authorities have rejected this claim. There has been no missile launched from Iran to Turkey.
Okay.
So it has been absolutely denied and denounced.
So then NATO, in this case, is lying?
Of course, because our authorities are saying that the cases that we have launched, we have accepted that we have launched. But on this case, we haven't launched any missile to Turkey, because Turkey is the best friend of Iran, and we have very good relations, and there is no reason to attack Turkey.
So you're friends with Turkey, you're friends with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, friends with Bahrain, with Kuwait, but you are enemies with Israel. Why the enmity between Iran and Israel?
Because we believe that Israel is illegitimate and occupier, a regime in the region. And always the solution that we have proposed has been that, look, all the Palestinians, aside from they are Jewish or Christian or Muslims, they can come together and have a referendum. And then the result of that referendum would be acceptable to Iran as well, but not under killing the people or occupation or force occupation. If that result comes from out of that referendum by all the Palestinians, then that would be acceptable and respected for all countries, including Iran. But as long as they are under suppression and the policy of aggression against other countries are continued, that regime is illegitimate to Iran, and we cannot recognize them.
The late Ayatollah has in many times spoken about Israel, calling that the words that you've used now. It's an occupier, a fake state, not a legitimate country, and in some parts saying that Iran, the Zionist regime, needs to stop existing.
No, nowadays what has happened on the ground, and the fact is that the Zionist regime is an existential threat to Iran. And they have showed by their own conspiracies, by their own supports by the terrorists, terrors, and then 2 rounds of wars, or even more than 2 rounds, because before that they also used to attack the diplomatic premises of Iran in Syria and elsewhere. So it was not the first round. They have showed that they cannot live in peace with Iran, because this is their policy aggressive policy for expansion. That's all. That's nothing else.
Okay, but how do you balance this? Because I can hear what you're saying, that you see the enmity and the aggression by Israel, right? If Israel also, and the ambassador will be here tomorrow, he'll talk about, I suspect, the fact that Iran has declared enmity with Israel and said that Israel should not exist as a country.
You should discriminate between the...
So who started this first?
Of course.
Did Iran start saying that, this Israeli state, what you call the Zionist state, should cease to exist? Yeah. And then Israel retaliated? Or did Israel say that Iran is our enemy?
Yeah. In international law, any kind of military action should be based on very concrete, imminent, visible, understandable threats and evidence. But in case of Iran and Israel, you haven't seen such an imminent existential threat, imminent and evidence. So it means that if somebody says on the issue, somebody says to you something, you cannot attack him easily, because there has been no imminent such kind of attack from his side or threat from his side. You should prove first that there is such an imminent threat. Iran has never attacked Israel, and always we have been attacked by Israel in many places. And again, it is very obvious that at least for 2 rounds in June 2025, and now they have committed an act of aggression against Iran and killed in June more than 1,000 civilians. And now, up until now, in the second round, they have killed more than 1,200 civilians in Iran. And you remember on the first day of war, they attacked a school, elementary girl school, and they killed 165 girl school. They are enemy to existential threat to the Zionist regime of Israel or the United States. Is that true? Or when they attack hospitals, many hospitals in many different cities in Iran, they are threat to Israel. You know, they are claiming that Iran is a threat to them while they have all the means for mass killing and genocide. They have the nuclear weapons. Iran is a member to the NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, is a member to the IAEA with the unprecedented historical inspections throughout the history of the IAEA. And the IAEA, as Secretary General, also Director General, very recently, last week, just again claimed that there is no evidence, and we haven't said never that Iran has pursued any military purpose for its nuclear activities.
Let me actually go into that, because that's often the pretext for, maybe whether it's attacking Iran, which is that, uranium enrichment and so on and so forth. And like you've said, while there has been no evidence that Iran is weaponizing, uranium or using it for nuclear purposes for war, there is also the fact that there's a low trust within the global ecosystem whenever issues of nuclear weapons come about. How do you build confidence in the international community that indeed Iran is not trying to build, nuclear weapons?
Sure. The only way for making trust and confidence in international level is the mechanisms that has been put in place by all the countries in a multilateral way of thinking.
Right.
And it is the IAEA and the NPT. So Iran is a member to the IAEA.
Yeah.
All the inspections have been carried out on Iran non-stop. Constantly, all the surveillance, all the inspectors have been in Iran for 2 decades. And as a result, 16 reports have been produced by the IAEA that has said that Iranian activities are peaceful. And we haven't found any kind of evidence that shows any deviation from peaceful purposes to military purposes. So that's the confidence there. And but again, when you has a plan to attack the country, you use all these things as a pretext. And to me, as I understand the case, is that nowadays it's not a war because of or due to the nuclear activities, peaceful nuclear activities of Iran or missile capabilities. No, it's not the case. To me, as I understand, it's an Epstein war against Iran. Because now you see how severe is the case of Epstein in the United States and many other countries. Many authorities are named in that case. And just let you know that during these 6-7 days of war against Iran, many documents from the Justice Ministry or Department of the United States in regards to the Epstein case has been removed from the website. So you see,
it's a distraction.
Of course, it is just to distract the attentions from that sort of scandal, which is this is their civilization and this is their case. So that's the answer.
Okay, so nuclear enrichment and nuclear weapons is one of the reasons or whatever. The other is support for Hezbollah and Hamas, which are threats to Israel. How do you respond to that?
You know, in regards to the just to say this as well, in regards to the nuclear facilities and the threats as they portray, you know, the Trump has and other authorities in the United States have several times they have claimed that they have obliterated the facilities in Iran in June. So what has remained again to kill up until now civilians and destroy the whole countries and civilian infrastructure?
That's very
again
true.
for the same reason. This is for that. And
it's true. It's a oxymoron. They did state that they had obliterated.
Of course, but there has been nothing to destroy, if they claim. The second thing is regards to Hezbollah, as you say,
and Hamas,
and the Houthis.
And Houthis, you know, they are Lebanese, they are Palestinians, they are Yemenis who are struggling for their self-determination. They have their own decision-making process. They have their own authority, their culture, their language, their everything belongs to themselves, and they decide what to do. Of course, politically speaking, always, we are supporting not only Hamas, not only Hezbollah, not only Houthis, but any other person in the world who is oppressed. And it has been the long-standing foreign policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran to stand by the oppressed people throughout the world. So Palestinians, especially Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthi, they are their own people. They fight for their own destiny, and they wanted to have their own kind of faiths in their own countries. So, and they have no relation with Iran in terms of their fight against oppressors.
But Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, if it's about supporting the oppressed people, then it's support for the Palestinian people, it's support for the Lebanese people, support for the people of Yemen. This is support for the armed resistance groups that are in times trying to, you know, fight for whether it is their freedom and against other forces, yes. But those are the armed, what would I call them, factions of that freedom movement. But for the vast majority of the Palestinian people, the Lebanese people, the Yemeni people, they aren't Hezbollah, they aren't Hamas, they aren't Houthis. So if it's really about support to them, then it should be about support to them then, not
the states.
the states.
State to state.
Yeah, state to state, not state to armed faction.
Again, this is their decision to how to act, and it's not our decision. And they are not proxies of Iran. But again, on the other side, it is the Israeli regime who is proxy to and the child of the United States. You know, we don't have proxy, but they don't have their own proxy, which is Israel in the region, who is act on behalf, and now together with the United States. And they are following only imperial, temptations and projectiles.
Balozi, just get this answer straight. Has Iran in any way ever supported Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis?
But you know, the question is not supporting whether Iran supporting Hezbollah or Hamas on other country, other movements, freedom movements. Of course, they have the right to fight for their freedom. It is absolute right for them. But the question is now, and the fact is that the United States and Zionist regime of Israel, in violation of international law, in grave violation of the Charter of the United Nations, and against all the moral principles and humanity, has attacked an independent country who is member of the United Nations Charter. Okay. And in the Charter of the United Nations, there are the mechanisms for resolving conflicts, disputes, and issues. And they didn't go through those mechanisms that are negotiations, that are, mediations, or the United Nations system to us has failed to exhaust its duty in this regard.
Dr. Gholampour, my question again, has Iran supported Hezbollah, Hamas and the Houthis?
What do you mean by support? If you mean support by politically support, always we support
Financial
all those
support,
who are
military
under
support.
oppression. We support.
Financial support, military support, training.
I don't know. I'm not in that position to answer this question because I don't know. But of course, we support all the freedom movements who are fighting for their freedom and self-determination.
Ambassador, you are a 40-year veteran in foreign service. I'm sure you've come across this accusation in the international spaces that Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. And by that, they mean that Iran is supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis.
Yeah. And what do you mean by terrorism? If you mean terrorism,
the activities of these groups.
Okay, to bring
Hezbollah, Hamas,
of course,
and the
to
Houthis.
bring a whole area of residence like Gaza Street or Beirut and Lebanon and Syria and now Iran and other countries to the ground, to zero, to the ground, and to kill and to commit genocide, as you have been, now the Netanyahu is under the warrant of the ICC and International Court of Justice. Mm-hmm. So it is their verdict, it's not my verdict. And Netanyahu is under, this verdict for genocide and war crimes. And again, they are committing war crimes in Iran, killing civilians and students, and they attack, the sport clubs and infrastructures. Mm-hmm. This is terrorism, state terrorism. Again, Iran has been victim to terrorism. First of all, Iran has been victim to economic terrorism by the United States.
I want to come back. I want to bring you back to this question.
Under
Balozi,
unilateral coercive measures,
yep.
That prevent access to medicine, access to food, access to resources by the United States for decades. This is terrorism, state terrorism.
Everything you say, I hear. We hosted the Palestinian foreign minister here late last year, and we asked her, what do they consider Hamas? Is it a terrorist group or not? And she said, Hamas, from the activities of what it has done to its own Palestinian population, right? It's a violent group. Has Iran supported Hamas?
We always support all the freedom movements, all groups who are under oppression, and they are fighting for their self-determination and free from occupation. If the Zionist regime of Israel is telling these stories and narratives, they should first and foremost implement United Nations resolutions. Why they don't? What they are not complying with those resolutions?
Mm-hmm. You've been very categorical.
This is not our resolutions. This is the resolution of the United Nations.
True. You've been categorical about international law, order, following these things. Sure. What has Iran done when it comes to, for example, its seat in the U.S.? Has it pushed for, whether it's sanctions, whether it's the criminal case against Israel and things like that from an international law perspective, so that we can see, there was attempts to go about this the legal way, the international law way? Always Iran has pursued all the legal steps through the different cases in the ICJ, International Court of Justice, against the U.S. Several times attacks against Iran. If you remember, during the war, 8 years imposed war from the Saddam regime against Iran, which was supported by the United States and many other Western countries. Passenger aircraft was down by the U.S. military force, and as a result, around 300 passengers were died in that accident, in that crashing. And then we brought the case to the ICJ. And in case of attacking Iranian oil resources by the United States military forces, we brought the case to the ICJ. In case of the sanctions, we have always gone through all the mechanism of the United Nations. But the Security Council of the United Nations has 5 permanent members, and 1 is the United States. And they block all the processes
to be finalized through and that's why we called it failed system. But we have gone through all the system, always through in regards to the nuclear dossier. We always have been working with the IAEA and many other countries in this regard to resolve these issues very friendly and very peacefully through diplomatic pathways. But unfortunately, they are not obliged to these processes because they say, as they have said several times, that they have the might and they are the right, and they bring peace as they wish by might and force. So this is what they say. The other thing is that the Zionist regime of Israel and the United States, they are not able to live in peace. And their history, short history of the Israeli regime, almost 80 years, and the short history of the United States, almost 280 years, shows that they have been always in wars, not in peace. There is only 16 years of exception in the history of the United States that they have lived in peace. The rest, always they have been in war, and it means that they survive only in war. And peace is as an existential threat to the Zionist regime and also to the United States.
Okay, let me bring it home to the Iranian people. Now, mixed reactions after the death of Ali Khamenei, and the fact that it seemed to be celebrated in some bits, obviously an affront to the sovereignty of Iran and the Iranian people, but it can't be also ignored that it seemed that in some quarters there was some celebration. And then that's the pretext again used by Donald Trump. It was like, this is for the Iranian people. How do the Iranian people genuinely feel about this?
Of course. Iranian culture doesn't allow, when you are under attack by foreigners, to celebrate. And it has been shown and demonstrated throughout the history of Iranian culture and civilization. And nowadays, if you have one example you can show to me if they have celebrated, even all the dissident Iranians outside. No, under foreign aggression, always Iranian has shown their solidarity and unification. They are united under such aggressions, and again they are united, and that's why many scholars, many interpreters and thinkers, they say that Trump has made a mistake because by this aggression the Iranian have been more cohesive and more united. And as you mentioned to the supreme leader, as they have martyred our supreme leader against all international norms, principles, rules, orders, and everything. The Iranian political system shows that it's very stable. And immediately after, we just established the Council of Leaders. And now we have the Assembly of Experts who they are negotiating for selecting the new leader. And the Assembly of Experts are elected directly through election throughout the country.
Before this escalated to this point, late December, early January, I think even at some time in November, there were protests in Iran. And you've even mentioned them, the protests in Iran. Why were people protesting?
It was because people are under pressure. Economic pressure, and for a long time coercive measures and economic sanctions have put a lot of limitations and constraints in terms of for example the foreign exchange rates, and it was soaring very speedily. And of course business people, they couldn't do their business on a usual basis, and they came on the streets and they protested. And the protest was very peaceful. And they have the right to protest. And it has been recognized by the authorities. And the authorities told them that, okay, we listened to you, we heard you, we are taking initiatives to responding appropriately to your demands and needs. But after 7-8 days of peaceful demonstrations, again, the United States and the Israeli regime, by the Mossad and the CIA, they use their own cells of armed groups. They dispatched them into Iran, and they used firearms, and turned everything into violent situation, and they killed too many Iranian police force.
How many?
Unfortunately, too many, more than hundreds. Police force, because the police force was showing restraint just to control the situation, but they attacked. They armed cells who came from abroad and supported and payrolled by the Zionist regime and the United States. They came and infiltrated, and unfortunately happened those situations that was very unfortunate.
So 100 police officers were killed.
More than
100
more
police
than
officers.
hundreds.
Right.
How many civilians?
How many civilians were killed?
Based of the the official figures that has been published, it's around 3,000 people, unfortunately, and they have been mainly killed by these kind of terrorists.
No. Were they killed by the protesters, or were they killed by the authorities?
I have not been there.
3,000 civilians.
I have not been there on the streets.
Right.
I've been here, but our official report says that they have been killed by terrorist armed forces who infiltrated and payrolled by the Zionist regime of Israel.
So the official
And
reports,
now again they are contemplating to have again terrorists from abroad to send to Iran to fight against the government and to follow their agenda.
So let me see if I get it right. The official response of the Iranian government is that more than 3,000 civilians were killed in the recent protests, but they were killed by fellow protesters who had infiltrated the protests.
They were armed terrorist forces who came from outside and payrolled by the United States and by the Zionist regime.
Did the did the authorities, did the police kill any of these armed protesters?
They have been arrested, many of them.
Okay.
Of course.
How many?
I don't have the figure. They will be published
the official
appropriately.
records.
I don't have official report in this regard.
If there's official record of the
I
number
don't
of
have.
civilians dead, the number of police officers dead, it's also official, according to the government, that there was infiltration by forces armed and supported by the CIA and the Mossad.
Let me make clear.
I'd like to know how many of the CIA Mossad people were actually arrested or killed.
Probably they are still under investigation, and it's in the hands of the judiciary to declare. But let me to clear one point.
Before you go on to the next point, it's a tale as old as time that protests happen. They often start out peaceful, then or for whatever reason, regimes want to hit back, want to suppress, and they do so. But then the explanation that usually comes after is that they were bad cells, that, essentially the infiltration, that the police were going after that. And it's we've heard it here in real time as well, when it was very clear that that wasn't the case.
Okay.
So the idea that it was the CIA and Mossad, or people funded by the CIA and Mossad, that infiltrated these.
First of all, let me to make clear that when you have riots and the society is in chaotic situation and it's destabilized, people need to live on an ordinary basis, and as usual. And then this is the duty of any established government to restore the order, to the people, because the people deserve to live in peace and have their own daily basis. They cannot be jeopardize their life, their affairs, because of these demonstrations. This was something that my government very precisely did and brought back order to the society, and we have seen the result. And the second point is that such kind of arguments and narration doesn't justify foreign aggression.
It does not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely
and
not.
if for example, you had some similar situations in your country, in Kenya, during the protests. And it doesn't justify for any other foreign country to commit aggression against a country because of those situations.
Not at all.
Absolutely not.
This is not
a justification.
It is not an attempt.
And the question now today.
This is not an attempt to justify any aggression on Iran.
Thank you
Don't
so
get
much.
it confused.
That's correct. Yeah.
It is not an attempt to justify any aggression on Iran.
That's common
But it is
understanding.
also important to hold the Iranian government and the Iranian leaders to account for their rulings, their doings, and their injustices to the Iranian people as well, where that is the case, right? It can't only be one-ended. And because you are the representative of the Iranian government here, it's you will pose the questions to. But it is not an attempt to justify aggression.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is common understanding.
I want to draw a parallel here. There are people in Lebanon who would like to see change in their country. There are people in the Gaza Strip who would like to see change in their country, or in Yemen who would like to see the change in their country. They form themselves into groups, whether it's Hezbollah, Hamas, or Houthis. Iran, because it supports people and their push for independence in their country, supports them. However, whether it's just moral support or financial support or arming them, right? There are people in Iran who would like to see a change in their government. Is it wrong for Israel to support the people of Iran who would like to see change in their country, or for USA to support the same?
First of all, allow me to say that a genocidal government is not in a position to support a liberation or a democracy or anything else in another country. You first should go to the ICJ and ICC, International Criminal Court, and to be accountable for all your genocidal actions that you have taken. The one who is want to bring kind of liberation, democracy, support anything, should be in a position to do so. But the Netanyahu is not that man, first. Secondly, now the Iranians are under bombardments. And the true question is to ask about the consequences of these bombardments for the civilians, for the children, for the women and infrastructures. And all this happens in violation of international law. And I think that this is the most important questions now it is for the people of the world to answer. The groups in the movements, freedom movements in other countries, they have their own right to fight. They have the right to fight for their destiny. And it is not in our hand. Just now, Iran is exercising its right for self-defense in accordance with the Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. And we cannot be silent or neutral to the foreign aggression. My government will take all the necessary measures to defend itself and its people. There are many mechanisms for resolve any issues domestically in Iran. We have elections. In Iran, the system is based on the elections, direct elections. We have elections for city councils, for the parliament, for the assembly of experts, for the president. All are elected, and the people are electing. And now you are witnessing nowadays, after the martyrdom of the supreme leader, millions of Iranians are on the streets every night to protect the system. And this is the real democracy.
How far is Iran prepared to go to
we will stand
in what you're calling the defense of your sovereignty?
Of course, we will stand until the end. And we will not, give up, or we are not submissive to this foreign policy, foreign aggression. And as I told you in the beginning, as long as Iran is under attack and is not stopped, we will defend ourselves. And when they stop first the attacks and aggression, then our authorities will decide to end it. But until that time, we'll resist, because Iran is a country of resistance.
Are you still open to arbitration from Oman or anyone else?
Oh, of course, any country and any international organization, especially the United Nations, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the UN Security Council, all other countries, and in particular in Kenya. And I've told myself directly to the President of the Kenya, President Ruto, that you should do your all good offices for bringing a situation, an atmosphere, to create such an atmosphere for peaceful resolution of the conflicts, because each and every country is responsible and has a responsibility to protect international law, the Charter of the United Nations, and international system and order. And this is the duty on each and every one. And this is something that I personally gave this message to the President Ruto.
Thank you so
Are
much.
you prepared to support the opening of the Strait of Hormuz?
No.
It's impacting international trade. Sure. And Kenya is among the countries that are suffering.
You know, when I was talking with the Kenyan authorities, quite in advance of start of this aggression, I was telling to them that, look, if a war happened and it turned to be, all over war and regional war, then it's not only Iran or other countries who are in the region who are suffering from this, the repercussions of this war, and other countries beyond that region also will suffer, including Africa and Kenya, because the route is for energy, for food security, for all, and the prices will, rise, and it will affect the life of the people. And I was telling to them that this is the responsibility, including you, as the authorities, to go and talk and prevent to happen such an aggression.
Yes.
So this is the first thing. The second thing is that just I want to confirm to you that the Strait of Hormuz is not closed or blocked by Iran up until now. The routine movement is there. This is something that our authorities has declared.
So the Strait of Hormuz is open.
As based on the Iranian authorities have declared.
As per Iranian authorities, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Also, Iran did not fire any missiles into Turkey.
No, Iran has denied any fire missile or launching missile to Turkey.
Okay.
To Turkey.
That is the Iranian ambassador to Kenya, Dr. Ali Gholampour. We've been with him discussing what is happening, of course, and we do hope for a peaceful resolution to this and a quick one. Sure. Thank you for making time for us,
Thank you
Ambassador.
For having me, and thank you for your audience and viewers. All the best. Pleasure.
We have to end the show there, but in the next hour, she farms, she feeds, she leads. That's what's happening on Your World. She farms, she feeds, she leads. Women transforming agribusiness into sustainable income. Winnie Lubembe and Umeri Mikali will be discussing that. And they'll also be discussing Women in Film Awards. So access granted, women filmmakers that are driving innovation in the creative economy. I see the person who cast me for MTV Sugar Mashariki. Her name is Lorella Joey. She's a nominee for the Women in Film Awards and an amazing casting director, alongside Suki Wanza, Agnes Kola, and Teresia Njeri. They'll be talking to you about the Women in Film Awards. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Tupatane kesho 6 to 10 a.m. From myself, Mariam Bishar, Eric Latif, Janet Mbogo in absentia. Have an amazing Thursday.